All right, so I have 4 articles for you tonight, and they are all from The Advocate. And let's start with something that's, for anyone who has a lick of empathy, this would be a major duh. But apparently, we do not live in a country, at least in the United States, where empathy is rampant. So, anyway, to the article, transgender and non binary youth whose pronouns are respected attempt suicide less, report. Which, again, should be self-explanatory that you respect people's identity and they're going to live fulfilling lives. I mean, not always. There could be all sorts of other demons going on that simple respect isn't going to help with because, there are plenty of people who are assholes. So, yeah. But anyway, to the article, using the chosen names and pronouns of LGBTQ plus youth isn't just respectful, it's life-saving. Again, anybody who has any idea about the LGBT plus community could have told you that. You didn't need to have a study about it. It's pretty obvious. Transgender and non-binary youth ages 13 to 24 whose pronouns are respected were 31% less likely to attempt suicide in the past year than those whose pronouns are not respected, according to a new report from the Trevor Project. Nearly one-fourth, 23%, of those who said none of the people they knew used their correct names and pronouns also said they have attempted suicide in the past year, compared to just 10% of those who said almost everyone in their life respects them. Pronoun respect is just showing respect for someone, their identity, their feelings, how they take up space, how they navigate the world. Steve Hobaika, lead research scientist on the report, tells The Advocate. When we don't respect someone's request to call them by the name they go by or the pronouns that they use, that is actively disrespecting their sense of self, their dignity, and the fact that the vast majority of people in the world do not have a problem respecting someone's nickname or respecting a cisgender person who does change their name like that. And that's what I keep pointing out. There are people who go by nicknames. I mean, let's take girl names like Charlotte. What's a common nickname for Charlotte? It's Charlie. Okay, no one is claiming that she's trans. She just goes by Charlie. Same thing with Roberta. A common nickname for that is Bobby. Again, nothing to do with being trans, and nobody has a freaking problem doing that. Well, most people don't. So, why do we have such a hard time with trans people's names? Like I said, I think it was yesterday, in my video that Rachel Levine was dead named in the White House or wherever her plaque is. I mean, what the hell, people? It's a name. Why is this so hard? Overall, less than half, or 46%, of trans and non-binary youth said that their pronouns were respected by a lot, most, or all the people in their lives. Unsurprisingly, older trans youth ages 18 to 24 were more likely to report pronoun respect, 51%, than younger trans respondents aged 13 to 17, 40%. Though not addressed in the survey, Hobaika believes this could stem from the long debunked notion that LGBTQ plus youth are somehow too young to understand their gender or sexuality. Exactly. I mean, how many people, when talking about trans youth, lose their absolute minds and say they're protecting children, and how, oh, they couldn't possibly know. But you have no problem believing when someone says they're cisgender or if their sexuality is straight. But the minute they question that, oh, you couldn't possibly know that. So, yeah, I totally buy that. There's this idea that people think that youth can't know themselves, and that's just not true, Obaika says. All data that we have on this topic, as well as our own lived experiences with identity, where many of us have very firm understandings of our identity at very young ages, these things don't just change overnight. Youth don't come to parents to talk about their gender the first time they have a thought. Exactly. This is something that they've come to a realization about. Some people go years without realizing. I mean, look at Caitlyn Jenner. She probably didn't realize she was trans until years later, until she was middle aged. But that's not like she just, decided one day to be trans. No, she thought about it for a long time, and it finally, the pieces fell into place. I mean, and some people, you know, granted the environment is going backwards, but for a while there, it was trans people were coming out younger simply because it was more comfortable to do it. They didn't have to fear reprisals for doing so. There are also disparities between binary and non binary identities. Trans boys and men, 52%, as well as trans girls and women, 48%, reported higher levels of pronoun respect than those questioning their gender, 40%, and non binary youth, 37%. I'm going to guess because, this is something you just know. Either it's because the age old look between your legs, as if intersex never existed. So this idea that how could you be questioning your gender? Now, do I understand it? No. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There's a lot I don't understand. I'm not going to declare it doesn't exist just because I don't understand something. And for non-binary youth, same thing. How could you not be male or female? How can you not be a boy or a girl? You have to be one or the other. Again, don't understand it because personally, and I've done a video about this a while back, that I think a lot of people probably wouldn't say they're non-binary if gender roles weren't so strict. And now we have dipshits like I mentioned that gender essay that OU student got a 0 on because she decided that gender roles are strict and biblical, even though she freaking wears jeans. And she's in pre-med because, that's totally biblical. Women were totally taught to get careers outside the home. They weren't supposed to just stay at home and make babies. But anyway, so yeah, for depending on your environment, gender roles are super strict. And I wonder how many people would call themselves non-binary if gender roles weren't so strict. Actually, probably for some trans people, the ones that don't have gender dysphoria, because obviously if you have gender dysphoria, that's a totally different animal. And of course, it has nothing to do with gender roles. But I really wonder how many non-binary and some trans people would feel like that if gender roles weren't so strict. Like, men would be able to wear makeup and dresses, and not just in relation to drag, but just simply be allowed to put on a dress or wear makeup or paint their nails, and nobody would think it's odd or go after them for doing so. Because let's face it, the most telling of that for women is wearing pants. Well, most women wear pants anyway. So I don't know what an outward appearance of that would entail. But anyway, moving on. Part of this is due to simply the English language and how it's constructed and what people are used to, Hobaika says. Many also think that gender-neutral pronouns or neopronouns are a new concept, and new concepts often make people uncomfortable. I do not get neopronouns one bit, and I have never encountered anyone who has done neopronouns. I have done gender neutral, but and then of course there's those who think that they know grammar and think that they them could never be singular, even though they have used it as a singular pronoun without thinking. But all right. Many simply aren't aware that singular they have been used for hundreds of years, and neopronouns almost as long. Okay, that's new to me. I didn't know that about neopronouns. The singular they that I did know, but neopronouns, no. What we do know is that by listening and respecting this person in front of us who is asking to be called by a specific name or use specific words when we're referring to them, it's going to really impact that person's experience in this conversation and afterwards, Hobaika says. Exactly. Exactly. As feeling seen feels good. And it's not just for trans people. I know a little bit of sign, and I do mean a little bit. But when I used what little sign I did know to a deaf person who came to the food pantry, they were just over the moon that I even knew a little bit of sign. They were just so excited that there was somebody who could talk to them on their level, as opposed to having to write notes back and forth. As I said, my sign is very limited, so I could only go so far with it before we had to go back to that. But just the looks on their faces, how their eyes lit up when I did even some basic sign. They were so excited because they felt like, yes, this is someone who understands me, because they bothered to learn at least a little bit of my language. It's the same thing for trans. Even if you do not agree or understand, even if you do not understand why they feel the need to go by a certain pronoun or go by a certain name, just the fact that you're willing to go there and call them by the names they want and use the pronouns that they feel that works for them. It will make them feel so good because they will feel seen. They'll feel like someone gives a shit about them, as opposed to those high and mighty who claim they give a shit about them by disrespecting them because they think they know better than the person what their lived experience is. Because, if that's your jam, I'm just going to misname you, I'm going to misgender you, and I'm just going to annoy you until you just shut up about it, because that's basically what you're doing. You're basically telling people that they do not deserve to be treated with respect. I'm not going to bother treat you with respect, because why should I? Respect is a two-way street. You're not going to respect someone who wants to use a certain name or a certain pronoun. You don't deserve to be respected either. So I will go out of my way to misname you, misgender you, and, live with it. All right. What we do know is that by listening... Yeah, I didn't do this yet. What we do know is that by listening and... Yeah, actually, I did do this one already. With the holiday season in full swing, many LGBTQ youth are heading home to families who don't respect their identity. Question: why are you going home? I mean, I know that there are plenty of people who really, really want that connection, even if it's toxic. But seriously, why go home if your family doesn't respect you? That might actually, your staying away might actually get them, two things could happen. They could double down with their disrespect, or they might realize, hey, if I'm going to continue being a dick, this person is going to not want to be around me. So I'm going to stop being a dick because I love them too much to, have them shut me out or whatever. I mean, like I said, there are plenty who will just double down on being a dick, but to queer youth, Hobaika says it's okay to remove yourself from stressful situations. Leave the room, call a friend, or call a hotline. To their families, he emphasizes again just how far a little support can go. And like I said, or just don't bother to go. I mean, if you're in a situation where some people in your family respect you, I can see why you would, go, because it's worth it. And even though you're dealing with some people who don't. But if none of your family respects you, stay the hell away. I just could not imagine. I'm in a privileged position that I have a family that, does respect me and does give a shit. But not everybody has that. And as much as you want that connection, I mean, what kind of a connection is it if people treat you like crap just for existing? It's not about knowing every pronoun that exists and memorizing them and getting it right 100% of the time, Hobaika says. It's about effort and just attempting to be respectful and kind to people. Just doing your best to meet youth where they're at and listening to them and doing your best to respect them. All right, and then they give their usual suicide prevention disclaimer, which I will read, and I will also put in the description box of this video. If you or someone you know needs mental health resources and support, please call, text, or chat with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or visit 988lifeline.org for 24/7 access to free and confidential services. Trans Lifeline, designed for transgender or gender-nonconforming people, can be reached at 877-565-8860. The Lifeline also provides resources to help with other crises, such as domestic violence situations. The Trevor Project Lifeline for LGBTQ plus youth, ages 24 and younger, can be reached at 866-488-7386. Users can also access chat services at thetrevorproject.org/help or text START to 678-678. So that is the end of that article. So let's move on to the two things that I get a lot of trolls on my videos for. I've already mentioned trans people, which this covers as well, but also Trump. So, this one is Trump rants nonsense about transgender people instead of fixing affordability crisis at Pennsylvania rally. Well, he also went full racist too, so he just was spouting off like he usually does. On Tuesday in northeastern Pennsylvania, President Donald Trump mounted the stage promising a sermon on economic revival. What unfolded instead was a familiar sprawl of grievances, boasts, and culture war attacks, most sharply aimed at transgender people, delivered in a rambling speech that repeatedly veered away from the affordability crisis dominating voters' daily lives. The rally in Mount Pocono drew roughly 600 to 700 attendees and marked Trump's first domestic campaign-style appearance in months, kicking off what the White House says will be a year-long blitz of stops ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, when Republican control of Congress and Trump's legacy will be on the line. Trump himself acknowledged the political shift. You know, when you win, you say, "I can now rest," he told the crowd. "We have to win the midterms." Wait, what? I can now rest? Does he know how politics works? It's not like, oh, I won an election. Now I can sit back and do absolutely nothing. What? Trump insisted prices are falling rapidly and mocked affordability as a Democratic buzzword. They have a new word. They always have a hoax. The new word is affordability, he said, before conceding moments later. I can read. "I agree the prices were too high." Didn't you just say it was a hoax? But his attempt to dismiss the issue collided with a persistent reality confronting American households. Housing costs remain punishingly high, grocery prices are still elevated, and medical expenses threaten to drag millions of families under. And that's before the tax subsidies of the ACA run out. And, of course, the Medicaid, kicking people off Medicaid. So between that, yeah, things will be real fun. Rather than outline a detailed economic plan to meet those pressures, Trump repeatedly pivoted to attacks on transgender people, using them as political shorthand in a broader campaign against cultural change. And again, plenty of racism. "We don't have men in women's sports," he declared. You're right, there aren't men in women's sports. Unless the mega morons force men to compete in women's sports. Okay, he declared randomly taboos. We don't have to sell transgender to everybody. What does that even mean? But anyway, the example I use, I'm blanking on his name, but I believe he was a wrestler in Wyoming? A wrestler in Wyoming who is a trans man. Well, trans boy, because this was high school. And he was forced to compete against girls because the law was that you needed to compete with the gender you were assigned at birth. Okay. And of course, the mega morons and other transphobes pointed to this as proof that men shouldn't compete with women, completely ignoring the fact that this is a trans man and the only reason he's competing with girls is because he was forced to. He wanted to compete with boys. So that's what I mean. It's only the mega morons who make men compete in women's sports because trans women aren't men. All right. Minutes later, he escalated the rhetoric into mockery. I think transgender for all is great thing for the Democrats to be talking about. Transgender for every member in your family. If they're not feeling well that night, let's just change their sex. The scary thing is, I mean, in a normal world, this would be considered satire, and people would know that he's just kidding, that because that's not the way anything works. However, not only do I think Trump thinks this, worse, the people he's telling it to think this. Because that is not how anything works. Absolutely not. Not everybody, the Democrats don't want everybody to be trans. Actually, a lot of trans people probably wish they were born in the right body. I mean, maybe there's some people who are happy that they're trans, but not in the sense that it wouldn't have been easier if they were just born in the right body to begin with. So, I'm not sure why he thinks that Democrats want everybody to be trans. Or, you're not feeling well that night. I'm sorry. Not feeling well one night? Are you confusing trans people with gender fluid? Not that is an accurate description of gender fluid, but it's a little bit more accurate than for trans people. That's not how this works. Again, people don't wake up one day and think, I think I was born in the wrong body. This is something they've been grappling with for a while. Nobody just wakes up one day and says, I think I'm going to be a boy if you were born a girl. No, that's not how this works. Again, even if you're gender fluid, it's not like one day you feel like a boy, the next day you feel like a girl. You might go months, years, using he, him pronouns, and then decide for the next year that, you know what, you don't feel like a boy anymore, you feel like a girl. Okay, fine. And for people who mention that I talk about feelings, that's just because the language isn't precise enough. Not because they just, wake up one day and like, I don't feel like, being a boy. I feel like being a girl. It's just simply because I don't know the language to properly express, that change. As opposed to, yeah, it's just about feelings and there's no science behind it. Those are two different things. The structure of the speech followed a pattern that has defined Trump's rallies for nearly a decade: sweeping claims about economic dominance, denunciations of the press, attacks on political enemies, and prolonged digressions. Our prices are coming down tremendously from the highest prices in the history of our country, he insisted falsely. Right. Because, he's incapable of accepting that he might have messed up. I mean, this is the same man who managed to bankrupt a casino. Seriously, how do you do that? Trump also described fossil fuel production as the master lever for affordability, repeating that energy prices alone dictate the cost of nearly everything else. When energy comes down, your other prices come down, he said, promoting oil, gas, and coal while denouncing wind and climate policy. Now, this is a case of he's not completely wrong, because a part of the reason your groceries are higher prices, not just the tariffs, even though that's a biggie. It's also the fact that if they come from somewhere else, the trucks have to haul it, which costs fuel. So he's not completely wrong. However, it's a very basic understanding of how things work. But this might explain why we just hijacked a Venezuelan oil tanker. Maybe that's why we're doing that. We're stealing their oil because Trump wants to bring energy prices down. That makes sense. It's fucked up, but it makes sense in his warped mind. Yet outside the rally hall, many Americans continue to experience a different reality. While inflation has slowed since its 2022 peak, prices for housing, childcare, insurance, and food remain significantly higher than before the pandemic, and wage gains have failed to keep pace. Throughout the rally, Trump layered his message with racially charged and ethnocentric attacks, returning to familiar targets and themes. He singled out Minnesota U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, a Somali-born Muslim lawmaker, claiming she does nothing but bitch, and telling the crowd she should be thrown the hell out, a line that prompted unchallenged chants of "send her back." What a wonderful group of people. Trump also resurrected his earlier rhetoric about shithole countries, saying the United States should accept immigrants from places like Norway instead of Haiti. Okay, number one. Let me finish that sentence, sorry. Haiti, Afghanistan, or Somalia. Moments after an attendee shouted the slur, and Trump replied, "I didn't say shithole, you did," before recounting the 2018 Oval Office exchange in which the term first surfaced. He pointed to ongoing fraud prosecutions in Minnesota to cast Somali Americans broadly as criminals, telling the crowd to get them the hell out of here, and asserting without evidence that they hate our country. Right, that's why they risked life and limb to come to the U.S. because they hate the U.S. That makes so much sense. Oh my God. But anyway, he says, places like Norway. For those who don't understand the obvious code, he's talking about white people. White people do immigrate. It's just that you are so fixated on the fact that brown people are immigrating that you don't even pay attention to all the white people who come. Let's see. What else do I want to say about that? I thought there was something else. Okay. I'll just keep going. Transgender people, meanwhile, emerged as recurring targets as Trump stitched cultural resentment into his broader narrative of national decline and restoration. His remarks landed amid an aggressive nationwide campaign against trans rights, with dozens of state laws restricting gender-affirming care, bathroom usage, and other public accommodations. By night's end, Trump had spoken at length about tariffs, coals, charts, and personal loyalty. He invited guests on stage and praised allies. He mocked opponents and the media. But the affordability crisis, invoked repeatedly as a term of derision, remained largely unexamined in policy terms. Right, because I don't think he understands what the term affordability means. I mean, this is the same man who thinks that grocery is an antiquated term, that nobody uses the term groceries anymore. Which makes you wonder what he thinks people call the store they go to buy food and other essentials. They call it a grocery store? I mean, seriously, how out of touch is he with reality that he does not realize that groceries still exist? How is it that he's never heard the term affordability? Oh, that's right, because he's so rich that it's not something that needs to enter his orbit. Anyway, that is the end of that article. And next up, we have an update on the World Cup Pride match. And this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. I'm rather disappointed, but, not surprised. Egypt and Iran tell FIFA to cancel World Cup Pride match, calling it contrary to values. Okay, before I continue, I'm going to guess that this is the governments of Egypt and Iran and not the players. Secondly, this is being held in Seattle. It's just so annoying that Muslim countries seem to think that, when their leaders would come to the U.S. and women would wear hijabs and cover up nudity and nude statues or whatever, not to offend the sensibilities of said leader. It's like, okay, so when we go to the Muslim countries, we don't have to cover up or do whatever because we can just keep going on with our values, right? Why are you trying to tell another country what they can and cannot do? Plus, this is FIFA. It's an international organization. It's really not about you guys. I mean, I assume that this is the first match in Seattle and that's why they're doing it. So it just was the luck of the draw. It's not like it was anything personal, that it's some attack or something. Anyway, the nations involved in the first ever World Cup Pride match are asking FIFA to cancel it, calling it culturally and religiously contrary to their values. The International Soccer Tournament's first ever Pride-themed game is scheduled to take place in Seattle, Washington, at Lumen Field on June 26, the first day of the city's annual Pride weekend. It will feature Iran and Egypt, both countries where same-sex sexual relations are criminalized. The Egypt Football Association, or EFA, said Tuesday that it had sent an official letter urging FIFA not to go forward with the theme, writing that it completely rejects such activities which are directly contrary to cultural, religious, and social values in the region, especially in Arab and Islamic societies. In order to ensure that the match is held in an atmosphere of respect and focus of the sporting aspect only, the Egyptian Federation categorically rejects these invitations and demands FIFA not hold any events or offers related to homosexuality support events within the stadium on the day of the match, EFA wrote. Okay, just think of the crazy logic. They want an atmosphere of respect, yet they have a problem. Yet this is a country that disrespects the LGBTQ plus community. This is like MAGA. This idea that, oh, you must respect me, but we can shit on you all we want, because, it's all about us. Egypt's morality laws criminalize same-sex sexual activities between men with a maximum penalty of 3 years imprisonment and a fine. Wait a minute. What about women? Meanwhile, Iran is the one nation that is known to actively enforce the death penalty for same-sex sexual relations, as the Islamic Penal Code of Iran punishes livat, which is sodomy, tafkis, which is thigh sex, which I still have no clue what that is, and musakeke. Let's try that again. Musaheke. Ugh. I love it when I add a syllable for no reason. Which is lesbian intercourse, levying up to 100 lashes for other sexual acts. In Iran, state television said Monday that Tehran would appeal to FIFA over the match, according to The Guardian. Iran Football Federation head Mehdi Taj was quoted as saying the government had raised objections against the issue, calling it an irrational move that supports a certain group. Well, yeah, it's during Pride Month. Now, whether it's irrational, it's so funny. It's so funny that they whine about, oh, but this supports a certain group. Yes, because you'd rather that the world supports your certain group, which is Arabs and Muslims. I mean, come on. I do not understand what is the difference. I mean, Muslim, yes, that's a religion that technically can change. But Arabs? You can't change that. You can't change the fact that you were born an Arab. And you cannot change that somebody was born LGBTQ plus. So again, I'm not, they're just whining. Meanwhile, Seattle Mayor-elect Katie Wilson has voiced her support for the match, saying in a post that it is an opportunity to show the world that in Seattle, everyone is welcome. Our city is ready, the fans are ready, and I can't wait. FIFA World Cup is coming to Seattle, and we're excited to be part of the global celebration, Wilson wrote. With matches on Juneteenth and Pride, we get to show the world that in Seattle, everyone is welcome. What an incredible honor. So that is the end of that article. And I mean, if the world really offends you that much, Why do you insist on participating in world sporting events? I mean, seriously. You know that June is Pride Month. What did you think was going to happen? I mean, it's not like FIFA decided, ooh, Egypt, Iran, well, let's put them in Seattle during their Pride celebration weekend, so they would have to play a Pride match. No, that was just the luck of the draw. And now you're whining because you have to, for at least one match, accept that gay people exist. Anyway, so I have one more article, and this is even less good than the previous ones. All right. Texas City votes to overturn LGBTQ plus anti-discrimination protections. So that's great. Of course, you would expect it to be in Texas, but still. A city in Texas has become the first in the nation to reverse existing anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ plus people. The Arlington City Council voted 5-4 Tuesday in favor of a revised ordinance that removes gender identity and expression and sexual orientation as protected characteristics from the city's anti-discrimination policy. Until now, the rule had shielded LGBTQ plus people against any direct or indirect exclusion, distinction, segregation, limitation, refusal, denial, or other differentiation in the treatment of a person or persons in employment, housing, healthcare, and beyond. The clause had been temporarily suspended since August due to threats from Donald Trump's administration. Mayor Jim Ross joined council members Nikki Hunter, Barbara Odom Wesley, and Andrew Peel in voting in favor of reinstating the ordinance. For months, the public was told that the September suspension of Arlington's anti-discrimination chapter was necessary to protect federal grant funding. A spokesperson for the Help Center for LGBTQ plus Health said in a statement. That issue is fully resolved. The revised ordinance presented tonight, drafted by the city attorney, protected every dollar of the federal funds while restoring long-standing safeguards for all Arlington residents, women, men, children, minorities, veterans, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQ community. Trump officials threatened in August to revoke $65 million in federal grant money from the city if it did not remove language related to diversity, equity, and inclusion from its municipal code. Both Arlington and Fort Worth subsequently voted to end their DEI programs and rewrite ordinances to exclude phrases related to race and gender. Because nothing says fragility than excluding people based on race and sexuality and gender. Because let's face it, this is all about, even average white people getting ahead of racial minorities and sexual and gender minorities. Because they can't accept that they're not the best in everything, because apparently in their mind, because they're white, and especially if they're white males, they're the best at everything always, and so nobody could possibly do anything better than them. Iowa removed gender identity from its state civil rights act in February, making it the first state in the country to take away rights from a group previously protected in law. Arlington's reversal makes it the first individual city to do so. By refusing to reinstate the anti-discrimination chapter, these council members knowingly continue to deny all local protections against discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations for everyone in our city, the spokesperson continued. Every Arlington resident, visitor, and worker is now more vulnerable because of this vote. What happened tonight was a failure of leadership by 5 council members. Arlington deserves better than elected officials who hide behind excuses even after every concern they raised was solved. So that is the end of that article. So I believe with that, I've done with this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.